everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to be bringing you this video. I have been having a lot of fun lately just playing with my jelly plate. I have been following Diane Reevely, Tim Holt, and Dina Wakley over the past, say, month or so, you know, the whole quarantine thing. They've been coming up with a lot of inspirational videos and a lot of learning, actually. They've been doing a lot of teaching for free on YouTube, and I'm ever so grateful for them. And as a result, they've really like fired up this whole love of color theory and play, and I'm in such a good place. So what I thought I would do is kind of bring you along on what I'm calling a jelly printing adventure. I sort of made this thing, jelly plate adventures, or jelly printing adventures, whatever, and see what I call it. So I thought, so I spent a whole lot of time and I've made this gorgeous little book, and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it again. I'm going to film it this time and come along and play with me. I have so much paint, you guys, and I need to use it up. I need to use it up so I can buy more. And I bought this beautiful jelly, I've got the big one. So gel printing plate. I bought this from Amira Scrap and Craft. I'm going to put her details below. And Amira also has the paints for Dina Wakley, which, oh, it's just, they're so yummy. Like, the paints are so beautiful that I just want to buy every single color in her range. So my aim is to get rid of all my paints and replace them with fresh new paints in a whole lot of colors, whether it's, you know, Tim Holt's colors or Dina's colors or Diane's colors, it doesn't matter. But I've got some stuff that's just been sitting here, and, you know, paint that just sits here, you know, after a while it just gets old. So let's go ahead and get started. So yeah, this is the little book that I made out of all the jelly print papers. Before the stage, it looks like this. So a whole lot of really beautiful prints and pose and all kinds of color play. Before that, believe it or not, I just used normal photocopy paper. So, and believe it or not, when you get to this stage, I've got 2 pages stuck back to back, and they are very thick. So I'm really happy with this quality. So go ahead just for now, just while you're experimenting on what combinations of color you like. So what I did was started off with A4, and then A4 gets chopped in half to go into A5. So go ahead and chop off all your A4s into A5. Now, just to be mindful at this stage, when you make your print, we're going to talk about binding methods, because I'm going to take you from, you know, the very beginning to the very end where you have a product like this. So I'm going to show you 2 binding methods. This one is the A5 on the landscape position, and you're going to go in half. So be mindful that when you come to using directional, let's say this one, okay, if we put it on this angle and we do it in half into a book, you know, that's okay, it still looks good, but it's not hearts. You know, you want the hearts to be this way. So I'm going to show you 2 binding methods. One which is going to be on the landscape position, folded in half, and one which is going to be in the portrait. So whatever directional papers you have, like this, like this, like this, we are going to bind them in this single loose leaf style. This is a binding method which I learned from Dina Wakley, and so I am going to repeat this. So this is really heavy cardstock that I was just practicing the binding, and it's really good. It's really good. So what I want to do is I'm going to do a binding in the A5 up and down portrait, and I thought that this would be a good project to do it in. So I will take you through that binding. That will be one of the videos that I come. But right now, let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start is, yeah, so grab your papers, now grab your paints. Now, so the one thing that I've really been concentrating on, I've been doing art for let's say 8 years now. And so I've been collecting paints. The first thing I want to do, the first thing I did was I put all my paints in cool, warm, and then a neutral box. All right, so this is what I have sitting on my Raskog on the side here. And so I also have this palette, this color wheel, which is a little bit, it's a little bit organized, but it really tells you how to, mix colors and how to use complements, analogous, complementary, all this stuff. But I'm going to show you how it's kind of a process. I've realized my brain has to organize things or else I don't understand what's going on. So I'm going to show you how to start and what to do. So yeah, so we're going to need paints, paper, paints, stencils. Now I have a whole heap of stencils and stamps. Just here I have a whole heap of stencils and stamps here, as well as like little, what do you call them, like cutouts, as well as like punchinella and tool making combs and stuff like that. Got my brayer, my small brayer, big brayer, a little mark making brayer. So just grab all your stuff, all right? So have everything kind of ready. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to do was, I'm gonna have my handy color wheel with me. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a link below in the description box. So this is so nerdy, you guys. So I've got it sitting on a ruler and it just kind of sits up on my wall here. So this is the color wheel. And what we do is divide it into, warm and cool. So cool means like, think of ocean. So that's this side, the blues and the greens, and warm is like, think of like fire. So this side here will be the warm, this side here will be the cool, and if it's leaning more towards this side, then it's like a warm red, and if it's leaning down towards the yellow side, that it's a cool red. Same with the blues. If the blues are kind of leaning more towards this side, that it's a warm blue, and if it's leaning more towards this side, that it's a cool blue. That's how I think of it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start with yellow. So yellow always comes under the cool colors, and these are the only yellow paints I have. So first thing is I have sped up this video to about times 800. I've got so many hours of play here, and I thought that introduction was way too lengthy. So pardon me, but it's going to be a bit quick and you won't see some of the pulls, but I'll show you in the end. So the important thing here is just to show you my process. So I did a whole lot of different prints with each color, starting off first with just the one color. So I did pages where there was a full background of yellow, and then I did pages where there were just prints of the yellow, and then I did partial prints where I just wanted a little bit of the color to show on the page, and then what I ended up doing was coming back later as I started adding more colors and printing secondary and third colors on top, so I had many colors to the page. And I'll show you the partial prints and the pattern print papers as we go. So just starting off here, so yellow, 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 just yellow, and I'm going through a whole lot of my stencils. The first thing that I do is I roll the paint, then I add a sheet on top, taking away some color, and then going ahead and pulling another print and getting the reverse. It's then time to move on to the oranges, and here we go with partial print, and then pulling again and getting the rest of it. And so I just wanted to make a few pages of each color, just because I'm going to show you how I organize, making a journal. I'm going to make a whole lot of little journals to play in, and so I wanted to have a whole lot of pages of every color for each of my journals. I have a stamp on the side there, which is like a doodle stamp. And what I do is I stamp on the outside of the stencil. I put the stamp in the paint, and then as I pull the print, I pick up the rest of the stamped images around the edges, and I'll show you once again once I go through each print what it looks like and the effect it does. I also here, so I brought in my little black my black page from another pull, and I'm just coming in now picking up some of the excess. So obviously you see where my page structure is. It takes the A5, and then I always brayer beyond that, and so there's just a lot of paint there. And so when I put prints into that excess paint, it's just lovely, yummy paint that you can add to other areas, other pages that you've made, contrasting colors and such. So it's basically just going through your paints, having a little bit of fun, going through your colors, and yeah, enjoying the process. This is where I started putting two paints next to each other. Now that I'd moved on to orange, you know that orange sits next to yellow, and you know that you can kind of mix them together and they won't become mud. So I did an ombre effect where I put one on one corner, one on the other, and then mixed it so that it combined really lovely and really smooth in the middle. I'm using also my palette knife here to sort of spread it around. Some of my paints, like I said, they were quite old, so yeah, really thick. But I find that the thick paint actually works better than the runnier, newer paint that I have. So impasto paint was actually the best, and Dina Wakley paints are heavy bodied, so they actually work really well as well. I also found that when I used stencils that were old, it pulled up some of the paint from the stencil, so that was a lovely surprise. Here we go now. This is Blushing by Dina Wakley, and I love this color and I actually love the stencil. So look at the two side by side. This is the positive and one's the negative. I need to go back and play with that stencil a whole lot more and then do some coloring in. Sometimes what I also do is layer two stencils together, and so it looks really good when you do that. More white space, and white space is always really good. I have to try so hard not to put so much color on each of the page, because the white space is actually really helpful, and it helps it sort of helps guide you. Now this is what happens when I want to clean the plate. When I want to clean the edges, I add just a whole lot of white, and then I come in with just another paper, and I pull all the excess paint that's just sitting there on the gel plate. I've now moved on to, pink, and soon moving on to mauve, and then purple. No, I think I'm going to move on to red next. So pink, and then red comes next. So here we go with the reds. Now I have to be very careful with red because it's such a strong color. So this is where I like to do patterns. So if you put down a whole lot of stencils and then just take patterns off onto each single page, usually works so much better than having a full page of shocking red. I think though that when you come down to the ghost print, it's really nice to do a full page, because then it won't be so prominent and so in your face. So that's really good. And then also I go ahead and add the white on top, so it really dulls down that stark red. It feels like, like you're asking a bull to come charging. So when it comes to red, I really don't do too much full pages unless I water it down, so to speak, dilute it down with a little bit of white. Yeah, so what I'm doing here is I am sponging through red, yellow, orange. I think I do a little bit of white as well, and pink. Yeah, and this is where I love this technique. So you get the positive and then you get the negative. So very different to doing it just stenciling onto paper. It's a very different look. It's actually a lovely look. I actually love, the texture and the whole look of the pulled print on the jelly is very different than anything, any watercolor, doing it on an acrylic block, whatever. So this is one of my favorite techniques, is to sponge through a stencil onto a jelly plate and then pull it off, and then get the the reverse image. And I'm just adding a little bit of yellow here and a little bit of purple. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing colors on either side of red, and you just get a really lovely combination of colors. And once again, it's a partial print, so it's not going to be so obvious and so in your face. You'll notice how different reds look really different. So I've got a true red and a Tuscan red in the Americana colors, and one you can see is a lot darker, more leaning towards the blue side, and one's I think more primary and quite really stark red. Another thing that I love to do is putting a stencil down and then printing the script stamp on through it. And then what you do is you pull that up, and then you just see a whole lot of script inside the stencil that you do. So now moving on to the purples. Purple sits right next to red, and so I didn't clean my plate. And you actually see here what I'm doing is I'm just using, once again, just an open stencil so that you can get the bold color of the red and the purple in sort of batches, and so it doesn't look too stark. I also love this mark making brayer. I started using it from purples onward, and so you'll see purple dots on almost everything. So now that I've got purple down, I know that yellow is the complementary of purple, so I went back to some of my prints that had yellow in them, and I added just a little bit of markings, and I love how it turned out. The more you progress, so now I've done yellow, I've done orange, I've done pinks, I've done reds. I've started now going back and making marks on each of my previous sheets with either stamping or with my mark making tools, or even just putting that first bit of stenciling through, just as I'm doing now. So here we go, stenciling analogous and complementary colors. So the first thing was a purple, that was a partial pull, and then I went ahead and brought a stencil in, and then adding previous colors like yellow and red. And I love that page. All right, so this was later in the day. I had cleaned everything up, so got rid of all the reds and the purples. Here's time for greens, and I just wanted to show you what happened. I'd cleaned the Gelli plate, getting all the seepage from underneath there, and I'd put it in between the paper. And I came up with this pull that says racism, and I thought, oh my goodness, and it just stirred that, stirred all the emotions inside me, because that's what's going on at the moment, and I hated that. I thought, okay, I'll pull it off with some of the pistachio. Didn't come off. I thought, well, I'll need to put a little bit of heavy body paint because the pistachio was too runny. Used it with Dina Wakley, and it still didn't work. And so I have this word racism glaring at me, reminding me about recent events, and I was really unhappy making these prints because I just kept seeing that word, and no matter what type of paint I used here, I couldn't pull the word off. There are a little bit of like other pictures up the top there that are really nice in that newsprint, but the word just kept glaring at me. This was later in the day, like I cleaned and cooked and put the kids, like homework and everything was done, and I wanted to come back and have a nice play session with blues and greens, but just this really, I don't know, really upset me. And no matter what I did, it still remained. So after this, what I ended up doing was trying to wash it off, and nothing I did could do it. And then when I went to bed, I sort of thought, what I'll try tomorrow, which is today, maybe use some baby oil and see if that will wipe it down. Yeah, so weird. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting down die cut shapes. These are Heidi Swap stencil pieces, I believe. What I tried to do is I tried to leave some stencils and some stamps for later colors so that I wasn't seeing the same stencils appear in every single colors. So that was part of my strategy as well. And so it's lovely here seeing all these lovely die cuts in blues and greens, and you won't see them with the yellows and the reds. That was also part of my strategy of just how to go through this. But I love that one with the dots. So this is where I started screen printing. So I had this Heidi Swapp screen printing kit that I threw the box and just kept the colors and the stencil. Such an interesting stencil. Like, it's actually got a silk screen in between the plastic or the vinyl, and I'd never done that before. So as with anything else, you put the paint down and then you put the stencil and then put some more paint. So it just carry on as a different stencil, but it's a very cool stencil. So I'm really glad that I have that. I only just used the one. I think it's a pack of 3. I just used the one. So continuing on through the greens, I love this lime green. This is the Dilutions green. I think it's cut grass. I did have another one. I think I'll show you here a pot of one of her blues, and it's just completely congealed. I had to throw that one out. That happened also with one of my pinks. I bought it maybe in 2015, so maybe 5 years ago, 2016, when they first came out. These things don't stay that long. That's why I thought, you know what, I just want to use all my paints. So as you see, nothing new here, just making marks, playing with blue and green, and every time I make a mark, I just take a little bit of a stencil or a stamp and I put it onto other things so that yellow has blue and pink has blue and red has blue. So that's how I decided to keep them all kind of clean. Not many mixing or ombre. I just decided to do it with the stencil instead. So this is the screen paint. The Heidi Swapp had a paint that came with the silk printing kit, and it's like a really beautiful metallic. There's one in pink and there's one in blue, so you'll see a lot of metallic from here on in because I used her paint in the blue section. So yeah, so I'm coming up to almost finishing now. I'm sorry it's been so long. I just wanted to show you my whole process. In my next video, what I'm going to do is show you some of the pulls, and then we'll start binding, and then I'll show you how to enhance the backgrounds and just do a whole lot of play. So thank you so much for hanging in there with me. We're at 23 minutes. It's almost about to come to a close. Here's that pot that got all seized up. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I know it takes a long time, but it's so much fun. I do hope that you do grab yourself a Gelli print or make yourself one first at home so you know how amazing it is, and then go ahead and buy your one that stays non, because when you make your own, it falls apart after a while. So it's good to have one that you just can pull out and you can depend on. At this stage, I ran out of paper, and so I did have to stop. I got through that entire wad of papers. I'm gonna have to go out and buy some more copy paper now. So I'll see you in my next video. Thank you guys.